This is Thomas J. Seaborn Photography. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how I make my more natural looking HDR images. And in particular for today's, I'm going to show you how I made this really cool long exposure HDR image. For the long exposure, I used a 10-stop neutral density filter, which decreases the amount of light by 10 stops, which is quite dramatic. So if you have a normally, which would be a half-second shot, it's going to make it I think a 300-second shot. So it's quite the tool you can use to make really dramatic shots in full daylight. So here's our shot, 5 shots from Yosemite Valley. This is the El Capitan, and I was pretty much in the Merced River, but not quite all the way in. But if I would have fallen, it would have been disastrous. This was a really tricky day to shoot. You had pretty low, fast-moving clouds. It was mostly just overcast, and I got lucky that I got some blue sky here. These two images aren't necessary for the HDR, but I think that it helps add to the drama and you get with the clouds and the cloud movement, which if you didn't have the clouds, you wouldn't even be able to tell it's a long exposure because the water, there's not a lot of action going on in the water. So I use Photomatix for my HDR processing of my raw images. So I'm going to go ahead and open those 5 images up in Photomatix. So file, it's not how I normally do it, so let me show you. I just normally would hit load, bracketed photos, browse, find your raws. I've stuck them in a folder for my convenience. Hit open, hit OK. I never check show intermediary 32-bit HDR image. I don't know why you would. Here comes the real meat of the options. Align sources. The program will help you align your sources if they're off. If you're on a really sturdy tripod, you could probably uncheck that and be fine, but I'm going to leave it checked just because I don't have anywhere to go, so it's okay if it takes a little bit extra. I don't let it shift too much because you end up cropping it too much, but that's how I leave it. The ghost setting, there's no real ghosting in this image, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. But Photomatix is pretty good with their selective deghosting tool. I reduced the noise in Photoshop, and I am going to click Reduce Chromatic Aberrations because it's a raw image and I haven't tweaked any of the chromatic aberration that might be in that image. Though that image in particular is not one where you're probably going to find a lot of glaring chromatic aberrations. So here we go, hit OK, and it's going to take a while, which I'll fast forward for you. And here we go, and we are back. So here in Photomatix Pro, this is the meat of it. You can do 2 different types of exposure, blending / HDR, or whatever you want to call it. I like tone mapping. It's a little bit stronger. It gives you a little bit more control. I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger. There we go. It gives you, a bunch of presets that they didn't have in the original program, so I never learned to use them. So I just start here at default. That looks pretty freaking good right now, actually. Usually I have the strength up higher. It usually creates a stronger black. But that looks pretty good right there. Color saturation, I usually like to leave neutral, but I'm guessing 50 is neutral. Luminosity, I'm not sure exactly what it does. It tells you down here. I guess I could have read it to you, but I like to experiment to get that nice natural look. I like it just a little bit brighter. Maybe a little bit brighter, without blowing those whites out. There's a nice balance right here between the rock, El Capitan, and the blue of the sky. Nothing is too much brighter than the other, and I think that really is the trick to getting a really good HDR image, is to not have things that just don't look natural. I guess that isn't very helpful, but if you look in this image, there's nothing that's like, okay, there's nothing that seems to be glowing except for maybe a little bit of the trees and then maybe a little bit of this water, but yeah, I think that this looks kind of how the human eye would see it to an extent. So where were we? Lighting adjustment. This is the mightiest of the sliders in all of Photomatix. All the way to the right is going to be the most natural looking image. all the way to the left is going to be the nastiest, gross thing you've ever seen. It's actually not that bad for this case. I'm going to go about right here, kind of in between, maybe a little bit more. You kind of want to find the perfect balance between kind of what these trees are doing in terms of darkness and shadows, and what El Capitan and these rocks and kind of the sky is doing here is kind of how I'm going to judge where it needs to be. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to just kick it back a little bit this way because I think we're starting to get to the more surreal look. I think it looks perfect right there. I didn't touch the detail contrast, but I'll show you what that does real quick. I just don't think that looks very good. Either way you go, it's like you just leave it in the middle and you're always fine. 0. Smooth highlights. You know, reduce the contrast and the highlights. You can do that a little bit. That can give you a more natural look, but I don't think in this image it's going to make a big difference. Wow, the black's at 0. I'm going to have to increase that just a little bit. Without losing too much shadow detail, we can keep that creeping, because that's just going to increase the overall contrast of the image, making our darks just a little bit darker. Push that back a little bit, because I think we're starting to look a little fake down here. White point is fine. Gamma affects the middle of the curve. So moving this way will make your image much darker to the eye, and the other way obviously will make it brighter. I think that looks just about good. Micro smoothing, I never really touch temperature. I think that ACR and Photoshop do a much better job of your white balance. Micro smoothing is going to be it's like the clarity slider in ACR. All the way to the left is going to be the most clarity. All the way to the right, you're going to lose a lot of your micro contrast. I usually leave this pretty strong for landscape images. It just is going to help you bring out the details of good old El Cap over here that you're just going to lose if you don't keep it to the left. But you don't want to be too extreme. And also, jack up your noise. I don't ever play around with the saturation or shadow highlights. Saturation is a surefire way to look unreal, and shadow smoothness and shadow clipping, I don't play with that either. So there we go. From there I'd hit process. Just to note, this is just a preview of what it's probably going to look like, but sometimes it doesn't look quite the same. In the new version of Photomatix, they'll give you a little final finishing tool to play with the curves and some of the colors, but I think we did a pretty good job of getting this one just the way I did originally 4 or 5 years ago. Actually, I probably took that in 2009, so what is that? But it was January, I think, of 2009, so it's almost been 4 years ago. I think we're looking pretty good here. Let's just play around real quick, because we're here. I think we can bump the highlights. It's always good to add a little bit of subtle contrast. A little goes a long way. So I'm just going to call this done. Once I open this up in Photoshop, what I would do is do a lot of the basic things I would do to any landscape image. For the most part, I find that HDR images need a little bit of extra sharpening. And it always needs some extra noise reduction. But other than that, you can treat it like a normal image. You won't have to make a huge adjustment to the color and the contrast because it's already pretty much done for you. So there you go. So you'd go up here and you'd save it as a TIFF, and you'd have it. So thanks for checking out this video on how I create my more natural looking HDR images. Thanks.